Joining us now is Dr. Rob Wittman, Congressman, 1st District, Virginia. That's the Central Virginia area. All my coverage is there, so all of his constituents can hear him right now live on the radio. And Rob Wittman is the ranking member of the Sea Power Readiness Committee. Dr. Wittman, thanks for being with us. Dr. Wittman, let's go to the hearing today. Former Ambassador Yovanovitch coming in. A lot of sympathy around her, said that she got fired from or removed from her position as ambassador. Don't ambassadors serve at the pleasure of the president? What am I missing here, sir?
Yes, all the ambassador positions are serve at the pleasure positions. They serve at the pleasure of the president, and as we've seen in years past, there are a number of ambassadors that move in and out of these posts, and there are some that come up through the State Department core. There are some that are appointed from outside. So just because you are a career State Department employee and assume one of these ambassadorship positions doesn't mean that if there's a change in administration that you're going to continue there. So it's part of the process. It's part of how the president chooses to pursue foreign policy. Remember, there's different tracks on foreign policy, and many times the president has a specific mindset about what needs to be done in pursuing that foreign policy, and that's reflected in who he selects as his ambassadors in each of these posts throughout the world.
Congressman Wittman, let me ask you something. The President Trump's America First foreign policy, which is not in alignment with the unelected government bureaucratic state in Washington, D.C. We both know that. A lot of people are very uncomfortable with it. They want to maintain the status quo, Ukraine perfect example. So when you've got a guy like Ambassador Taylor who says to Pompeo, if you don't follow the preferred positions that I have on Ukraine, I will quit. Help us understand what that means. Like, you're serving the president's agenda, and you're telling the Secretary of State, well, if you don't do my agenda, I will quit. I mean, why wouldn't the answer be, great, don't let the door hit you in the ass? I mean, just explain to average Americans here that elected this guy because they wanted his policies implemented. What is going on with this?
Well, John, in those positions within the State Department, it has always been that the policy changes. It changes from administration to administration. And folks in those civil service positions have always been there to implement the policy that's directed by the administration. So when Secretary Pompeo said, this is the policy that we are going to pursue, it's up to the individuals that work there in the State Department to say, yes, that's our direction, that's what we're going to pursue, that's what we're going to implement. They can certainly have conversations and say, well, listen, we believe this, or we think that you need to reflect on these issues or things that we have learned through the years. But ultimately, their job is to work at the direction of the Secretary of State in implementing that policy. And certainly, listen, it's within their prerogative. If that individual says, listen, I adamantly disagree with your track on foreign policy, I just believe it's wrong, I can't implement that, then it's totally within their realm to say, okay, I can't see myself doing that, can't bring myself to do that, then I will leave the State Department and go and do something else. That's their prerogative. But if not, then their job is to do just as you would do in any job. If your boss comes in and says, do this, then that's your job to do, and you have a choice. You can do it, or if you're not going to do it, then you know that there will be consequences of that. Or the right thing to do is to say, listen, I just can't see myself doing that. I will leave and go do something else. That's the way the relationship works in how directives are put in place that come from the Secretary of State. That's what happens and is supposed to happen in all the agencies. It's what happens in private business. It's what happens in every other element of the real world, and that is you get directives from your superiors, you put those in place, and if you choose not to, there's consequences, or you say, sorry, can't do that, I'm out.
Exactly. I mean, I just, for the life of me, the first day of these public hearings, Congressman, and again, we can debate policy all the time, and you might not agree with all of the president's America First foreign policy initiatives, certainly going to a 300-ship Navy. You agree with that. Rebuilding our military preparedness up, which you were the chairman of the committee, now you're a ranking member. You agree with that. I mean, the president's done that, but there might be certain things in certain areas you might not agree with. So what, right? You're elected to Congress. You have a right to do that. But I guess what is, you look at this Wednesday forum, that's really what it was, and it was a 7-hour policy debate of crybaby diplomats whining about Trump didn't necessarily support their Ukrainian policy for whatever different reason. And that was 6.5 of the 7 hours was a policy debate. Why is this turned into an impeachment hearing? What is average people missing here, Congressman?
Well, I mean, really, the subjects that came up in the first of these impeachment hearings with William Taylor, and what was really more like an oversight hearing than it was an impeachment hearing. It was a back and forth about what should the policy be, what should the relationship be, back and forth in conversations with folks. I mean, that's more of an oversight hearing that you would expect to hear in the Foreign Relations Committee, not in an impeachment hearing. But that's where we are, and as you have seen too, there it seems like the highlighted issue there was a conversation that an employee heard, and a conversation with Ambassador Sondland and the president, and was overheard by another person, and then their assertion about what comments Ambassador Sondland made, and then the conversation was on a phone, and then this William Taylor said that this person told him what they thought they heard the president say. So, now we're into not only hearsay, but now, secondhand and thirdhand information about what somebody asserted that they heard in a conversation. So I think anybody else looks at that and goes, wow, if we're talking about something that rises to the level of Article 2, Section 4, impeachment hearings, and rises to the level of treason, bribery, or high crimes and misdemeanors, there should be some rigor there in the evidence that you consider about whether indeed it rises to that level, and then having a conversation about their assertion about what an employee told them they heard from a conversation with Ambassador Sondland and the president on a telephone, only hearing one side of the conversation. I find it hard to believe that they could actually fully hear what the president was saying on the telephone. Is really troubling. And listen, even folks on a variety of different networks pointed out that the element of this being hearsay is problematic as you're looking at this as an impeachment hearing, as this rising to the level of something as serious as the charges that would underlie articles of impeachment. So I think that's another thing to take away from the hearing the day before yesterday.
It's an absurdity what they're saying. Your colleague from Illinois, Congressman Quigley, actually said, I'm not going to waste your time playing the tape. You've heard it 100 times. Quigley said, well, hearsay is more impactful in a trial than direct evidence. Like, what the hell is he talking about? Hearsay is more important than direct evidence? I mean, are these people serious that you serve with? I mean, maybe he messed a sentence up and he meant something else, but, they questioned him on it. He didn't really clarify it. So here you've got impeachment based on third-party phone calls, hearsay, and somebody overheard a call. And then you've got Ambassador Sondland. I mean, look, Congressman, we make off-the-cuff comments all the time. It's part of life, right? You make them, I make them. So he gets off the phone with the president, somebody says something, he says, he's more interested in investigations than Ukraine. This is not he's not making a policy statement and a written memo. This is off the cuff comment, right? We all make off the cuff comments. All of a sudden, that's reason for impeachment. And what they're saying is, even though Ukraine got the money was held up for 15 days, maybe the president was thinking about, now we get the OMB people coming in trying to figure out why this money was held up. It was held up for 15 days. 15 days. And Zelensky said, I was under no pressure. His foreign minister said there was no pressure. They never did anything. They never went public. They never did anything. And then they got the money. I mean, to the life of me, average people in America, grassroots congressmen, cannot understand what this is about. And now Pelosi is back to insinuating the president is a Russian agent again. I mean, what planet are these people on, sir?
Well, John, it's as you watch this unfold. I mean, you had, first of all, the hearings in secret, and then you go through, and I'm still going through the transcripts of those, and now this is all going to be played out in the public. But the bottom line with all of this is to go back to impeachment being a constitutional process. And listen, I understand that in all instances there are some political elements of it. But this is a tremendously high bar that the Constitution sets in what is an impeachable offense. And Alexander Hamilton, pointed out to be very careful about not using this as a political means. And my concern is that this certainly has the flavor of being a political process, not a constitutional process. Now, granted, there are always some politics that play into this. But as you saw with the impeachment inquiry vote, I mean, it was a bipartisan vote against pursuing this inquiry. I mean, those are the things that I think people need to look at and understand. And listen, the bottom line, too, is they need to start with looking at the transcript of the conversation between President Trump and President Zelensky. Mm-hmm. Everything that you're hearing is somebody's interpretation about what that was all about. Mm-hmm. But I tell folks, go and read the transcript. Make a determination from there as to what you see in that transcript in relation to there being articles of impeachment, if they are ever brought forward, relating to Article 1, Section 4, and that is conviction of treason, bribery, or high crimes or misdemeanors. That's the measure that needs to happen with all of this. And looking at this additional information is somebody else's assertion about what that phone call was all about. Well, you can go directly to the phone call. The president directly released the transcript. I think that's the fundamental element of all of this.
I don't think there's any doubt about it. He released the transcript. The money never got held up. Nothing was said. The alleged victims said there was no pressure on them. They didn't even know about it. I mean, not only was there pressure, but President Zelensky and his foreign minister said they didn't even know it was being held up. Like, they didn't even know about it. I mean, how do you have, and I guess it was Jim Jordan, your colleague, who said you had 3 meetings to Ambassador Taylor with President Zelensky. You had 3 meetings. It never came up. You never talked about it. You never addressed it. It was not part of any of the meeting that you had. Yet you're saying money was held up and it was, keeping you up at night. You couldn't figure it out and you thought it was crazy. But yet you meet with the president 3 times and it never comes up. And he didn't even know about it. How do you withhold money from somebody for bribery if they don't know they're being bribed?
That's right. Well, in the underpinnings of bribery, John, is a quid pro quo. You have to say, here is something that I am withholding in order for you to give something to me. And in this situation, as you said, it wasn't until the Ukrainians didn't inquire until a couple weeks before the money was released as to, hey, what's up with the money? They didn't even know that it was being released. They inquired to say, hey, what's happening with the money? And then the money was shortly thereafter released, and they didn't do what was alleged that they needed to do, and that was investigate Hunter Biden in order to receive the money. They didn't start any of that. They didn't do anything to investigate Hunter Biden. So they didn't know until just before the money was released that there was even a delay in the money, and they didn't do what was alleged that they were asked to do in order to get the money, and that is investigate Hunter Biden. And remember, the the inquiry, too, on the president's conversation was about Ukrainian efforts to influence the 2016 election. That was the underpinnings of the conversation leading up to the conversation about investigating corruption there with Hunter Biden.
So sum this up for us. To sum up what's happened so far with this impeachment hearing, public, and what you expect today, Congressman Rob Wittman.
Well, you have Ambassador Yovanovitch will come in today, and I think it'll be a debate back and forth about her being released from her job and the underpinnings of that, and her back and forth about how she felt the administration was pursuing foreign policy. But remember, it's 100% up to the president as to how his administration pursues foreign policy. So I think that'll be the underpinnings of today. The testimony that you heard the day before yesterday, again, was about those individuals' assertion about the conversations and the actions of the president involving Ukraine, specifically with President Zelensky. So you're going to see, I think, over the next 3 or 4 weeks, them continuing to roll out witnesses. Those witnesses have been already interviewed in secret, and they'll roll them out to try to, I guess, put information out there concerning what they have asserted are impeachable offenses. So I think the American people will look at that and make a determination as to whether this rises to the level, again, of a very, very high standard for impeachment in Article 2, Section 4. So that's what I see unfolding, and ultimately it'll be up to the Speaker. And remember, it's ultimately the Speaker's determination as to whether articles of impeachment are filed. So she'll make a determination. If they are filed, then the House will vote as to whether to certify the articles of impeachment or pass what will be a bill, including the articles of impeachment, and then it goes over to the Senate.
Right.
And the Senate is actually will try the case that are the charges that are brought forward by the House against the president.
Congressman Wittman, I've only got 15 seconds, maybe 30. What is your message to Nancy Pelosi?
My message to Nancy Pelosi is to be fair and equitable with this inquiry. And remember, there was a bipartisan vote against the inquiry, but in the inquiry basis, I didn't see as being fair and equitable in providing for due process. She said yesterday, the president has the opportunity to prove his innocence. We are in a country where you are innocent until proven guilty. And the rules of this inquiry don't allow for the president to have counsel there, for the Republicans to call witnesses. So this whole thing to say, hey, listen, the president has the opportunity to clear himself, he doesn't. There's not the opportunity there with this. So I would ask her to open up the process, to allow the president to have counsel there, to allow Republicans to call witnesses, which is not happening. So this is what we see unfolding.
Congressman Wittman, I want to thank you for being with us today, and thank you for your candor. Good luck as you evaluate this going forward, and have a great weekend. Thank you for coming on the John Fredericks Radio Network, sir. Thank you.
Thank you so much, John. Thanks.